Hi, my name is Scott Naismith and I'm a landscape painter. So maybe you've watched my hue and saturation video about colour theory. Following that video, I did a video about how red and blue aren't the primary colours, and it was in fact magenta and cyan. If you haven't watched that, I'll leave a link in the description of this video. This tutorial is going to be a little bit more to do with colour in paint, which relates to the CMY wheel in the previous video. My CMY wheel video is, you can search it, it's called The Truth About the Colour Wheel. And I got a couple of comments on that were really valid, and it's inspired me to do this video. More to do with paint and paint mixing. The first one was from Wolf, and he says that RGB and CMY are just models. There's no such thing as real primaries. No matter which three colours you choose, you will still be left with a limited gamut. Absolutely true, Wolf, because CMY is of course just a model, and that's why we have so many paints in our range of paints, and it's a basis, a theory on how we can best select which colours to work with. Second comment was from Dudev. Thanks for the comment. I love your videos, he says. Thanks very much for that. But any colour theory is an idealised model of how colours mix. In reality, we deal with manufactured paints with idiosyncrasies which can only be understood with actual hands-on experience. So this video is about giving you that actual hands-on experience from colours that I have purchased, artist oils, and I'll show you some of the ways in which they behave. So what I have here are artist oils of various makes. I've mentioned in previous videos my preferred Blockx paints, but it doesn't mean that I don't experiment with some of the other makes and everything. I've chosen some makes here that give you a range of prices as well. So it gives you an introductory price with the Lucas paints, and then it goes through to the more expensive or the most expensive Blockx paints. You get what you pay for, but it is possible to achieve good results using cheaper brands and more expensive brands. Okay, let's have a look at the colours and the brands that we're going to be looking at here. I have a quinacridone rose, which I believe is a great quality paint, which isn't in the artist's quality. Lucas paints, I have Lucas magenta and cyan. Blockx paints, I've got Blockx magenta. I'm also going to be using Blockx primary yellow. WINDSOR and NEWTON do a permanent magenta, I'm going to be using that one. I've also got a transparent cyan from SCHMINKKE MUSSINI, and I've also got a cyan from Holland. Some of these paints do acknowledge that cyan and magenta are the primary colours. Lucas quite rightly pointing out that magenta is primary, but it calls it magenta red in brackets primary, and the blue is also cyan blue primary. But I'm afraid cyan is a different colour from blue, as is magenta from red. Okay, on this palette of colours here I have Old Holland cyan, Lucas cyan, Mussini cyan, SCHMINKKE MUSSINI, and I have some zinc white for mixing. And I've got my magenta colours here. I've got Lucas's magenta, Blockx magenta, WINDSOR and NEWTON permanent magenta, and just next to these cyan and magenta colours I have how they mix with zinc white. And when dealing with paints, we've got to understand that the colour can change a fair bit when mixed with a white. So to judge the pigment as it lightens is very important. So we can actually judge where in the colour wheel these cyans really lie, with Old Holland's being a little bit nearer the blue, the Lucas being a little bit nearer the green, and the Mussini being a little bit maybe in between the two. My preference with the artist colour is always with the Blockx paints, but I don't always stick to that. I do like to try specific pigments from other ranges, but you can see here that the once mixed with a little zinc white, the Blockx magenta comes somewhere in the right region when we're talking about the magenta here. I believe that the Lucas paint would possibly come slightly nearer the transition between magenta and red on our colour wheel. With the Winsor and Newton just coming the other side, possibly nearer towards the purple from the magenta. Now I've also incorporated in this palette, just to show you, is the quinacridone red. Quinacridone red is not within the Blockx range, and it's a colour that I really like to build this hot pink kind of colour, which is very difficult to mix. I've shown just how it lies, and it's really this colour here, lightened a little. That's I would see quinacridone is slightly towards this colour. Important in your colour mixing is knowing which side of the primary being magenta, which side of the primary a colour lies. If this colour lies just here, then to get a saturated red we need to use quinacridone and not Winsor and Newton magenta. Winsor and Newton magenta can be used better to mix a blue. Okay, I'm mainly talking today about the colours of magenta and cyan, with primary yellow being a little bit more obvious because everyone considers that they would know what the primary yellow is. Mixing primary colours is the best way to achieve a large range of saturated colour only using two paints. What's important about the colour wheel is to realise which side of the primary the particular tube of paint lies. Let's look at how these specific tubes of artist oils behave. In order of pricing, I'll just set out exactly how this works. The quinacridone rose or quinacridone red is a student quality paint, which you would pay £8 for a tube this size. On equivalent value, you're talking per 40 millilitres, less than £2. The next one up is artist oil, which is Lucas. Lucas artist oil is one of the cheapest artist oil that you'll find, but I find it's a really good quality paint for the price. You're talking £3 per tube, 37ml. Okay, so we jump up to the Mussini oil paints, which is for cyan specifically, is just under £10 for a tube of cyan for Mussini. This one here, which is a 35ml tube. And then we have Old Holland, which is a bigger tube of paint. It's a 60ml tube. And the Old Holland, £14 for cyan, is probably giving the equivalent of around £10, much like the Mussini for this cyan. Blockx, on the other hand, £14 for a 35ml tube. I do feel that you get what you pay for a lot of the time, and the quality of Blockx paints, you do pay a lot for them, but the performance is great. And not all the time can you tell the performance of a paint just by simply taking the straight from the tube colour and adding zinc white. You start to gather the performance of the paint when mixing with other colours. So I'm going to start mixing other colours with this, and I'm going to take a popular colour to mix of a skin tone. A popular method to mixing a skin tone is mix yellow, a little bit of red and plenty of white to mix your skin tone. What that does is it kind of restricts you to the analogous range between these two sections. Cadmium yellow tends to sit on the red side, and cadmium red sits right next to it, so you're getting a limited range there. If we start to mix a skin tone using the primaries, we're able to mix a much greater range using less paint, meaning we're less likely to overmix the paints using too many paints. So let's start with the Blockx. Over here with the quinacridone red, I have actually lightened it with the zinc white and desaturated it using the opposite colour, and I've actually mixed two greens at the bottom. Green being the opposite colour to magenta. The green at the top is made using the Old Holland cyan. The green at the bottom is made using the Lucas paints. So first of all, I am going to desaturate my magenta colour by using green. I'll take half that mix and I'll begin to mix in bit by bit my primary yellow. With my Lucas paint, I'm going to straight mix in primary yellow. And then finally, I'm just going to take some of that skin tone mix and I'm going to desaturate. I'm going to desaturate using green. So there you have it, this much colour through the use of just skin tones based on two magentas using cyan and also primary yellow. So I would consider magenta and cyan to be very important to have a range of different options round about those primaries. But let's have a look at some of the paints that I have in my selection which I use. We've got Blockx Rose Lake, we've got Carmine, Turquoise Green gives me a darker option. We've got Artist's WINDSOR and NEWTON Manganese Blue, Rowney Cerulean Blue, Permanent Rose, and Cerulean Blue Phthalo. Phthalene Blue, Cerulean Blue. And these are just a small range of some of the cyans and magentas that I would keep.